Kiribati, a Pacific nation spread across the equator, but did you know its name is simply the local way of saying Gilberts? This remarkable country is a tapestry of coral atolls and reef islands scattered across a vast expanse of the central Pacific Ocean. It is a place of immense natural beauty and profound fragility. Uniquely, Kiribati is the only nation on Earth to have its territory in all four hemispheres: northern, southern, eastern and western. This geographical curiosity is due to its position straddling the equator and, until a recent adjustment, the international dateline. Imagine a country where one part could be experiencing today, while another was still living in yesterday. This positioning gives Kiribati the distinction of being among the first places on the planet to greet the new day. The heart of this sprawling oceanic nation is Tarawa Atoll, a slender ring of coral that serves as its political, economic and cultural center. South Tarawa, the capital, is a bustling hub of activity where traditional life and modern influences converge in a vibrant, sometimes chaotic display. Here, the government buildings stand not far from traditional thatched roof homes known as muaniabas. The lagoon, a shimmering turquoise jewel, is the lifeblood of the atoll, providing sustenance and a highway for local watercraft. For the people of Kiribati, or the Kiribati, Tarawa is more than just a capital. It is the focal point of their national identity, a place where the past and future of their society are being actively shaped and negotiated every single day. Life in Kiribati is dictated by the rhythm of the ocean. The tides, the currents, and the winds are not merely environmental factors, they are the very fabric of existence. The nation's 33 islands, most of which are low-lying atolls, rise only a few meters above sea level, making them incredibly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change and rising sea levels. This precarious existence fosters a deep and abiding connection to the natural world. The vastness of the Pacific is not seen as an empty void, but as a connecting medium, a source of life and a pathway to other islands and communities. The sky above, often a brilliant canvas of blues and whites, is as much a part of their world as the sea below, guiding navigators and heralding changes in the weather. The story of Kiribati's name is a fascinating journey through history, language, and the forging of a national identity. It is a tale that begins with ancient mariners and continues through encounters with European explorers, the turmoil of colonial rule and global conflict, and finally, the proud moment of independence. To understand why this nation is called Kiribati, one must first appreciate the deep cultural roots of its people and the historical forces that have shaped their destiny. It is a name that encapsulates a complex legacy, blending an indigenous voice with a colonial past, all set against the stunning backdrop of the immense and powerful Pacific Ocean. The journey to its name is in many ways the journey of the nation itself. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, the people of these islands had mastered the art of living in harmony with the sea. The Kiribati are among the world's most skilled seafarers, their knowledge passed down through countless generations. Their traditional outrigger canoes, known as wai, are marvels of engineering crafted from local materials and designed for speed, stability, and navigating the open ocean. These vessels were not just for transport, they were essential tools for survival, allowing fishermen to venture far into the Pacific in search of tuna, bonito, and other deep-water fish. The construction of a canoe was a communal effort, a sacred act imbued with tradition and expertise, reflecting the community's deep reliance on the ocean's bounty. Fishing was, and remains, the cornerstone of traditional life. The techniques employed are a testament to a profound understanding of the marine ecosystem. Fishermen could read the subtle signs of the water, the behavior of seabirds, and the phases of the moon to predict where fish would be abundant. They used a variety of methods, from intricate nets and traps in the shallow lagoons to specialized hooks for catching sharks and other large predators in the deep sea. This intimate knowledge ensured a steady supply of food for their communities and formed a central part of their cultural identity. The sharing of the catch reinforced social bonds and ensured that everyone in the community was provided for, a principle of cooperation that continues to this day. Equally impressive was their skill in navigation. Kiribati, navigators steered their canoes across hundreds of miles of open ocean without the aid of modern instruments. Instead, they relied on a sophisticated system of knowledge known as wave and stick charts, or matang. These were not maps in the conventional sense, but mnemonic devices that depicted the patterns of ocean swells and how they refracted and reflected around islands. By feeling the movement of the canoe and observing the stars, the sun, the clouds, and the flight of birds, a master navigator could pinpoint their location and set a course for an island that was far beyond the visible horizon. This incredible skill was a closely guarded secret, passed from master to apprentice through years of rigorous training. This traditional way of life, built upon the pillars of seafaring, fishing, and navigation, created a resilient and self-sufficient culture. The community was paramount, and life was organized around the Moaneaba, the large communal meeting house that served as the center for social, political, and religious activities. It was here that decisions were made, disputes were settled, and stories and knowledge were passed down through oral tradition. This rich cultural heritage, deeply intertwined with the ocean, formed the bedrock of Kiribati society. It was into this world of ancient traditions and profound maritime skill that new visitors from across the sea would eventually arrive, bringing with them changes that would forever alter the course of the island's history. The first documented European contact with the islands occurred in the 17th century, but it was during the late 18th and early 19th centuries that sustained interaction began. Whalers, traders, and explorers from Europe and America started to frequent this part of the Pacific. Among them was the British Royal Navy captain Thomas Gilbert, who, along with his colleague Captain John Marshall, sailed through the archipelago in 1788. They were charting a new route from Australia to China, and in the process mapped many of these previously unrecorded atolls. In honor of his contribution to this voyage of discovery, the island chain was later named the Gilbert Islands by subsequent cartographers and hydrographers. This naming convention was an external imposition, a common practice during the age of European exploration. The islands, of course, already had their own names, known to the people who had inhabited them for centuries. The archipelago as a whole was not conceived of as a single political entity by its inhabitants, but rather as a collection of distinct island communities, each with its own traditions and allegiances. The name Gilbert Islands was a label applied by outsiders, a convenient way to categorize a vast and scattered group of atolls on their world maps. For the Kiribati people, life continued as it always had, their world defined by local names and kinship ties, not by the lines drawn on a European chart. The name itself, Gilbert, is of English origin. When the Kiribati people encountered this new word, they adapted it into their own language, Gilbertese or Te Teatai ni Kiribati. The Gilbertese language has a limited set of phonetic sounds and specific rules for how consonants and vowels can be combined. The English name Gilbert presented a challenge. The Gilbertese language does not have the G sound, which is often replaced with ek. The L and B sounds were also adapted. The most significant linguistic shift occurred with the letters T. In Gilbertese, the combination TA is pronounced as S. Therefore, Gilbert's was transliterated into Kiribati. This linguistic transformation is a perfect example of how cultures adapt and reinterpret foreign influences. The name Kiribati is not a direct translation, but a phonetic rendering, filtered through the unique sounds and structures of the local tongue. It is a name born from the meeting of two very different worlds. While the name Gilbert Islands was a product of colonial cartography, the name Kiribati is a creation of the Kiribati people themselves, a way of making a foreign word their own. It is a subtle but powerful act of cultural appropriation, laying the groundwork for a name that would one day represent not a colonial possession, but a proud and independent nation. By the late 19th century, the Gilbert Islands, along with the neighbouring Ellis Islands, what we know today as Tuvalu, were brought under the sphere of British influence. In 1892, they were declared a British protectorate, and by 1916, they were formally annexed as the Gilbert and Ellis Islands colony. For several decades, the islands existed under relatively quiet colonial administration, with the British governing through a system of indirect rule that incorporated local island councils. Life for most Kiribati people changed slowly, as the colonial presence was often limited to just a handful of administrators, missionaries, and traders. The traditional rhythms of island life, governed by the sea and the seasons, largely continued as they always had. But this period of relative calm was shattered by the outbreak of World War II. Because of their strategic location in the Central Pacific, the Gilbert Islands became a key objective for both Japanese and Allied forces. In December 1941, just after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces occupied Tarawa Atoll and other islands in the group, establishing a formidable military base. They constructed an airfield on the islet of Betio and heavily fortified its beaches with bunkers, artillery, and thousands of elite troops. For the Kiribati people, the occupation was a time of hardship and fear, as their homes were transformed into a garrison for a foreign army, and they were subjected to forced labor. The strategic importance of Tarawa led to one of the most brutal and iconic battles of the Pacific War. In November 1943, the United States launched an amphibious assault on Betio, aiming to dislodge the Japanese and secure the vital airfield. The resulting conflict, known as the Battle of Tarawa, was ferocious. The US Marines faced unexpectedly low tides that prevented their landing craft from clearing the coral reef, forcing them to wade ashore over hundreds of yards of open water under withering enemy fire. The fighting was intense and bloody, lasting for 76 hours and resulting in staggering casualties on both sides. The battle was a brutal lesson for the Allies in the challenges of amphibious warfare against a determined and entrenched enemy. The Battle of Tarawa left an indelible scar on the island and its people. The islet of Betio was utterly devastated, its palm trees shredded and its landscape pockmarked with shell craters. The remnants of the conflict, rusting Japanese guns, crumbling bunkers, and the wrecks of landing craft can still be seen today, silent monuments to the violence that once engulfed the atoll. For the Kiribati, the war was a traumatic intrusion that brought the wider world crashing onto their shores in the most violent way imaginable. This experience profoundly shaped their modern consciousness and reinforced the significance of Tarawa not just as a capital, but as a place of historical memory and sacrifice. In the decades following World War II, a wave of decolonization swept across the globe. The United Nations encouraged self-determination for colonial territories, and the British Empire began its slow process of dismantlement. Within the Gilbert and Ellice Islands colony, a desire for greater autonomy began to grow. However, significant cultural and ethnic differences existed between the predominantly Micronesian people of the Gilbert Islands and the Polynesian people of the Ellice Islands. This cultural divergence eventually led to the decision to separate the two groups and allow them to pursue their own paths to independence, a move that was formalized through a referendum in 1974. The Ellice Islands were the first to move forward, gaining independence in 1978 and adopting the name Tuvalu, which means 8 standing together, referring to their 8 inhabited islands. The Gilbert Islands followed suit, preparing for their own sovereignty. A crucial part of this process was choosing a name for the new nation. While the name Gilbert Islands was deeply ingrained due to decades of colonial usage, it was also a foreign imposition, a reminder of a time when the islands were governed from afar. The leaders of the independence movement sought a name that would both honor their history and assert their new sovereign identity in the world. The solution they chose was elegant and profound. Instead of discarding the colonial name entirely, they embraced its local adaptation. They officially adopted Kiribati, the Gilbertese pronunciation of Gilberts. This decision was a powerful statement. It acknowledged the historical reality of the colonial period and the name that had come to define their archipelago on the world stage. At the same time, by using the indigenous form of the name, they reclaimed it, transforming it from a colonial label into a symbol of national pride. The pronunciation, with the S sound for T, became an integral part of their new identity, a linguistic marker that distinguished their own name from its English origin. On July 12, 1979, the Gilbert Islands officially became the Independent Republic of Kiribati. The adoption of the name was a masterful act of cultural synthesis. It did not erase the past, but rather reinterpreted it through an indigenous lens. The name Kiribati elegantly bridges the gap between the pre-colonial world of the Kiribati people and the complex legacy of British rule. It stands as a testament to the nation's ability to absorb external influences and weave them into the fabric of its own unique identity, creating something new and distinctly Kiribati. The birth of the nation was thus marked by a name that was both a nod to history and a bold step into the future. With a new name came the need for a new national flag, a visual emblem that would capture the spirit and identity of the newly independent Kiribati. The design chosen is one of the most striking and symbolic in the world, a vibrant depiction of the nation's unique geography and cultural heritage. It is not an abstract collection of shapes and colors, but a vivid illustration of the Kiribati worldview. The flag is divided into two halves. The upper half features a golden frigate bird, the Te, soaring gracefully over a golden rising sun. The lower half consists of 3 white and 3 blue wavy horizontal bands, representing the Pacific Ocean. The symbolism of the rising sun is particularly poignant. Kiribati, straddling the 180-degree meridian, has long marketed itself as the first country to see the sun rise each day. The 17 rays of the sun on the flag represent the 16 islands of the Gilbert Group and the island of Banaba, formerly Ocean Island. The rising sun signifies the birth of a new era, the dawning of independence and hope for the future. It is a powerful metaphor for a nation emerging from the shadow of colonialism and taking its place on the world stage. The golden color of the sun and the frigate bird against the red sky evokes the spectacular sunrises that grace the islands each morning. The frigate bird is a creature of immense cultural significance in Kiribati. It is a master of the air, a powerful seabird known for its endurance, speed, and command of the skies. For a nation of seafarers, the frigate bird is a symbol of strength, freedom, and navigational prowess. It represents the Kiribati people themselves, skilled voyagers who are at home on the vast expanse of the ocean. The bird soaring high above the waves on the flag is a proud assertion of their maritime identity and their connection to the natural world. It speaks to a history of exploration and a future of self-assured independence, navigating their own course in the world. The 3 white and 3 blue wavy bands are a direct representation of the Pacific Ocean, the lifeblood of the nation. The number 3 holds significance, representing the 3 island groups that make up the country, the Gilbert, Phoenix, and Line Islands. These bands are not just a depiction of water, they symbolize the wealth and sustenance that the ocean provides. They also represent the vast distances that separate the islands and the oceanic highways that connect them. The flag of Kiribati is therefore a complete narrative. It tells the story of a nation defined by its place in the world, a land of the rising sun, a people of the sea, united across a vast and beautiful ocean. In the end, the name Kiribati is far more than just a phonetic adaptation of a colonial label. It is a rich and layered symbol of the nation's journey through time. It encapsulates a complex history, from the ancient traditions of its first inhabitants to the transformative encounters with the outside world. The name serves as a permanent reminder of the colonial era under British rule, as the Gilbert Islands, a period that irrevocably shaped the political and social landscape of the archipelago. By not erasing this history, but instead reappropriating it, the Kiribati people have demonstrated a remarkable capacity for resilience and cultural ingenuity, forging a modern identity that is uniquely their own. The choice to adopt Kiribati at independence was a deliberate act of reconciliation with the past. It acknowledged that the concept of a unified Gilbert Islands was a colonial construct, yet it was also the framework within which a national consciousness had begun to form. By taking the name Gilbert and filtering it through their own language, they transformed it into something that was both familiar to the world and deeply personal to them. The name is a testament to the idea that identity is not static. It is a dynamic process of negotiation, adaptation, and recreation. It reflects a nation that is confident enough to carry its history with it, rather than attempting to discard it. Today, as Kiribati faces the existential threat of climate change and rising sea levels, its name and flag take on even greater significance. They are symbols of a unique cultural identity and a sovereign nation fighting for its survival. The rising sun on the flag is a daily reminder of hope and new beginnings, while the name Kiribati is a declaration of a distinct people with a rich history and a right to a future. This story of a name is a microcosm of the post-colonial experience for many nations around the world. The blending of indigenous and foreign elements to create a new, hybrid identity that is both authentic and modern. The journey of the name from Gilbert Islands to Kiribati is a powerful lesson in how language, history and identity are interwoven. It shows how a name can evolve from a mark of foreign dominion to a banner of national pride. It is a story of a people who have navigated not only the vast Pacific Ocean but also the complex currents of history, emerging with a name that perfectly captures their spirit, resilient, adaptive and forever connected to the sea. If this story gave you new insight, don't forget to like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Which country's name should we uncover next? Drop your suggestion below.